Mr. Nullup, you'll let me know when we're ready to go. All right, I will call this Tigard City Council study session and business meeting to order. City Recorder Krager, please call roll. City Recorder Krager, you may be muted. Not sure. Nobody else can hear her, can they? No, okay. Mr. Nullup, are we having a problem with her audio feed or? Okay.
Mayor, should I conduct the roll?
Yeah, if you want to conduct roll, we'll move on to Pledge of Allegiance. I don't think we can move on to actual voting or other things without her present, but I would think you could take the roll.
Not as skilled as she is, but I'll give it a whirl. Mayor Snyder.
Here.
Councillor Shaw.
Here.
Councillor Lube.
Here.
Councillor Goodhouse.
Here.
Councillor Newton.
Here.
And Councillor Nugg.
Here.
All right, Mr. Nullup, please, if you wouldn't mind putting up the flag for the Pledge of Allegiance, that would be great. And then I'll ask everyone to mute and participate on their own. All right, thank you, Mr. Nullup. I'll move on to councilor staff, any non-agenda items?
None for us, Mr. Mayor.
All right. We'll move on to public comment. Assistant City Manager Nyland, any follow-ups to previous public comment?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Councilor. There are no updates on public comment and no fun facts for this evening.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move on to an update from Police Chief McAlpine. Chief?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Police Chief Kathy McAlpine. I have today joining me is Lieutenant Mike Eskew. Again, this is my normal time to present the June dashboard. Hopefully all of you received it in your mailbag, but this is also my time when it's the first council meeting after the 4th of July event. And I like to report out the calls for service, our responses, and give you kind of the whole down and dirty of that day. So Mike, if you wouldn't mind putting up the PowerPoint, that would be great. And next slide, please. So just this year, what we tried to do, again, and it really starts about 1 or 2 weeks before the 4th of July, or when I get my first community member email reminding me the 4th of July is coming up and could we do something about it because of their animals and or, those experiencing PTSD and so forth. I know you receive those emails as well. So what we tried to do is look at last year's calls for service. Those were that we had addresses to. We tried to do a preemptive strike and send out letters, just remind them what was illegal, and that we would have an enforcement team out there. So that went out. I don't know if Lieutenant Eskew has how many letters went out, but we did do that. And then, as you recall, on July 1st, we had an emergency council session, which we declared emergency ban on all fireworks, and that was a Thursday night. So we quickly, the city communications team rapidly, for those who didn't already start their holiday, began communicating that out. And Kent Wyatt, our communications manager, provided an extensive recap. He is also available for any comments, but they pretty much hit everything they could. Committee for Community Engagement and Roundtable, the newsletter that went out to 30,000 subscribers. City council meeting obviously was live streamed. Facebook groups, flyers, newspapers, both in the Tigard Life, Tigard Times, and Coin. Next door, they had 3 posts, it reached about 1,000. And then on day 2 was about another 700 and another 700 on day 3. As you know, Mayor, the poolside chat, there were 782 people that viewed the live version and another 171 that viewed it later. So again, they were getting the latest update. And of course, we had our reader boards, social media, which we reached probably another 6,000 people. And so we really did try and educate our community very quickly on the fact that all fireworks were banned. Also, Friday following that, we developed our directive so that we could tell the officers how to proceed using the emergency declaration and what the citations would be and so forth. And then we moved to the 4th of July and our enforcement team. And that's where I'd like to give Lieutenant Eskew an opportunity to kind of go over this. He worked that night. He was our command duty officer, so he really got to see this firsthand and also the efforts that were done that night. So Mike, could you change the slide, please? And I would like to say before Lieutenant Eskew gets on, he did a very commendable job in a short amount of time. He met all my expectations in really being out there leading from the front. This is Mike's last 4th of July, as he'll be set to retire by the end of the year. And so I just really want to publicly thank him for his efforts, because he understood the seriousness that the council took it, the request from the community, and my expectations. So with that, Mike, would you like to go ahead and take over, please?
Yes, indeed. Yes. Thank you, Chief. Good evening, council members and Mayor. Can you hear me? I had login difficulties. Am I live?
We can hear you.
So yes, I was tasked with running a 4th of July detail. I know that the city council had passed an emergency ban, and I know that information got out as quickly as could be, and that Public Works also put some reader boards out in the community to help to pass that message along. So my team consisted of 3 officers that we called in early from graveyard to start their shift at 6, and that included a sergeant. So that team of 4 were tasked with responding to fireworks calls from 6 p.m. until midnight. And I was the team lead. I was free to also handle calls after I did a quick briefing. My goal for the evening for that team was to physically respond to every dispatched fireworks call. And if you were not on a dispatched fireworks call, it was expected that you proactively patrol problem areas as reported by members of the community to us, and take any self-initiated actions as well. So you can see from that chart that's showing, it looks like we had a report of 68 fireworks related calls, which is an increase from 2020 and 2019. I will say that the numbers are further broken down at the end, where I can tell you a little bit more details about that. So that was the mission, the staff I had, and what our overall goal was. So maybe next slide. This gives you an overview of the area that these calls occurred in. As you can see, it was fairly evenly distributed throughout the city. There were 2 calls that didn't show up for some reason in the River Terrace area. So we did have 2 calls. Both of those were me responding proactively. There were no fireworks that I saw. I just wanted to drive through the area because of reports from last 4th of July. So those calls were just extra patrols. So anyway, that's the purpose of that slide, is just to kind of give you an overview of where these calls were occurring. Next slide, please. So my goal for the officers was, if you had given a warning and they were non-compliant, to try to seize illegal fireworks, those fireworks that are normally illegal as deemed by the state. We try to give warnings so that we can stay free and continue on to respond to other calls. This is one place we went to that had received a warning prior. Then I came across them and I was able to seize about 45 mortars. They're fairly expensive, so it is definitely a pinch, and it sends the message that illegal fireworks are not tolerated. So that's just a picture of some of the mortars we seized from one of the larger parties, the Hawksbeard neighborhood off 109th and Huntington area. And next slide, please. Again, 3 officers, 1 sergeant. We also had a desk officer to call area information calls that officers were not dispatched to. Washington County Dispatch had a very strict protocol in terms of what they required before they would actually dispatch a fireworks call. So we had desk officers contact those others that didn't quite make that criteria. You see the breakdown there, 34 self-initiated calls, which is a very high number. Those officers and myself getting out into those neighborhoods that were reported as problems, just being present, no enforcement action, just making contacts, being in the area. 20 dispatch calls per the WACA criteria. And there were 6 area information calls, fireworks general calls that didn't quite make it to WACA's reporting status. That leaves about 8 left over that could not be fully contributed to us. It might have been a fire department call, or we weren't quite sure what the other 8 were. Some takeaways I'd like to report to you. It was very low fireworks activity overall. I've been with the city for almost 25 years, and that's the least amount of explosions and aerial shows that I've ever seen on working a 4th of July. So I believe that the city council ban and perhaps some of the letters we mailed ahead of time, those proactive efforts, I think contributed to the very low number of aerial fireworks that I saw that night. As mentioned, 45 mortar shells seized. We did not issue any criminal citations or otherwise. There was a variety of reactions from the community. This is the first time I've had a body camera, and it's interesting to watch the video after the fact. Everything to the family that said that they didn't know about the city council ban, and it appears that they did not. And a 7-year-old being very upset with me that I'm not making 4th of July happen. He was very devastated by me telling him they couldn't have the fireworks. So you got that reaction to the giant party with the big mortars going off and a lot of adults drinking. So it runs the spectrum on 4th of July. And as a police officer, we kind of don't meet any expectations. There's the group that feel that we do nothing, and there's the group that feel that we do too much. So you're really just trying to play catch up the whole night. But I thought that it was a very low call rate that evening. Again, just very few illegal fireworks activities and not the crazy nights that I've experienced in the past. So I think the proactive efforts helped. Warning letters, here's what I learned from that. I think that we need to send more of them, and I need to change the language. My language was a little bit accusatory, and I got some phone calls back from people that were upset with my letter, that had just moved into that house or received a letter at a residence that they don't do illegal fireworks, and they were pretty upset by the letter. So I think I need to make the letter more neutral and send more of them. Some brief takeaways on the warning letters. Many claim not to know about the fireworks ban, and I tend to believe them just from the reactions that I got. So maybe I know it was last second because it was an emergency, but perhaps we could put reader boards maybe more in apartment complexes or where large swaths of people are living, so the message gets out a bit more. If we in the future ban the fireworks, maybe help spread the message in that way. And those are basic takeaways. So if there's any questions that you have of me, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Lieutenant. And I'll also add that we received, the leadership team received a report out from TVF&R that indicated in 2020, they had about 15 calls that resulted in $150,000 of damage from related fires. And then this year were 9 calls, but 0 property damage and 0 in Tigard. So they too saw overwhelmingly positive compliance by our community members. And again, as the lieutenant stated, if you have any questions, either one of us will be happy to answer.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Council President Loop.
I just wanted to say thank you for the proactiveness of the letter and, you know, being so active out in the community. I know I can say in my neighborhood, it was quieter than it has been in years past. And just conversations, the community seemed overwhelmingly appreciative of the ban and in support of it. And I know that meant last minute scrambling for our officers to make sure that they had everything they needed. So thank you for everything that you did that day.
Thank you. And I will say again, as we compare to the rest of the cities in Washington County, those who banned and those who didn't, we by far dedicated staffing was greater than any other agency. I know of only one other agency that had 2 officers dedicated, and that was in a city that didn't have a ban. So again, our capabilities, we really did, even though we were constrained, we did make this an important priority.
Thank you, Chief. Councilor Goodhouse.
Yeah, I'll echo what Council President Lube said. Thank you for all the oh, is my camera's off too. Thank you for all the work. I think my neighbors were one of the ones that didn't realize there was a ban. I saw that down the road, lights went on. I went down there, talked to them, and they hadn't known that there was a ban, and they were doing some regular ones. It might have even been the one that was caught on the camera, because I know there was kids there, and they were a little upset because they were like, "What? We didn't hear anything about that. We don't always look at the city's website or the social media or drive by City Hall." So, but yeah, great job on it. There was still obviously some that were done. You know, when some of the social media comments I saw that were, you know, every year it's dry, so I'd like to see us maybe do some more education on how to do them safely in the future. You know, that way some of them that can do it. So, you know, next year I doubt we'll be banning again, or hopefully it's not as dry, but more of the education of not doing the illegal ones up in the air, and just a lot more safety of what they can do and how to avoid that stuff as well. So, but great job, everyone. And just while I'm talking, I thought I'd throw a separate part in with the upcoming police report you're doing. I mentioned a while back, and I heard again from Walgreens, that at 10 to 12 at night, there's still a lot of cars racing by there at high speeds. So I thought I'd just, I told them I'd mention it again as well.
That's at McDonald, Gardy, and 99W?
Yeah. And so I narrowed down the time. They said from 10 p.m. to 12 p.m., there's a lot of cars going at high speeds through that back and forth on 99W. It's what they call street racing. I don't know if it necessarily is street racing, but.
Thank you. I'll take a look at that. Appreciate it.
All right. Any other questions or comments for the chief? I also want to thank the department for the efforts that were put forward. I think we had, you know, a very good outcome given what we were going into the weekend with. So thank you. And Lieutenant Eskew, thank you for putting a great tactical plan together, or operational plan for that night.
Thank you, Mayor Snyder.
And I guess congratulations on your retirement. I don't know if you'll be at the council again. You're not a regular attender, but if I don't talk to you again, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, let's move on to item number C on the agenda, which is an update from the Tigard Area Chamber of Commerce. And we have Manager Love. Are you with us?
I am, yes. Hi, Council. Jessica Love, Community and Membership Engagement for the Tigard Chamber of Commerce. So excited to be here with you all tonight. I have a lot of fun updates that we have going on through all 3 different organizations that I report on. Our leadership Tigard is currently accepting applications for our class of 2022, which will begin in October of 2021. Our Government Affairs and Public Policy Committee group will be meeting, taking a break this summer, and will be meeting later on in the fall. And Tigard Restaurant Month, we believe, was a huge success. We're so very excited. We have over 50 passports turned in, which is amazing for our first year. And most people visited at least 5 businesses, which was great, with our highest being all of the restaurants, which was great. Thank you, Councillor Newton, for all of your support in the program. And then thank you to all of the council and Mayor Snyder for visiting our Tigard restaurants and supporting them during this month. We have a lot of community members that are wanting to see it back again, so I foresee that happening. So we're very excited about that. We are also very excited.
I will just say that was a lot of fun.
Oh, good. Yay. Thank you. I'm glad I think it was a lot of fun too. I got to try a lot of new places, and that's what a lot of people said was it kind of got them out trying new restaurants that they didn't normally get to. So hopefully we'll get even more businesses to participate in future years. We're excited to say that we have 6 new members of the chamber in June, which is been our highest months since the pandemic hit. So we're very excited about that. And we're seeing a lot of recovery and growth within the business community. And now that things are opening up more. So we're just very thankful to see businesses opening up again. We have our AM networking every Thursday at 7:30. We will be meeting mostly in person as we move forward. So we have Harris Work Systems hosting this Thursday. We had the On Point Community Credit Union grand opening this morning. Thank you, Councillor Newton, for coming and speaking for us today. And then Friday, we have the Kitty Academy groundbreaking ceremony at 2 p.m. We look forward to seeing all of you there. And then for the Tiger Farmers Market, we are open. We're going well. We did have to close one day this past couple of weeks because of the heat. So hopefully we won't have to do any more closures and we'll be able to continue on with the rest of the season. We are still doing our SNAP matching program. So anybody that's on food stamps can come use their benefits and we'll match them up to $15 each Sunday at the market. And that is in thanks to 12th and Soil and Water Conservation District. And then for the Tigard Downtown Alliance, we have the 2021 Tigard Art Walk happening right now. We just hosted a artist reception and a brush off for the first time. And some activities that we have coming up is the $25 art sale. We have featured artists in different businesses throughout downtown Tigard. We have workshops planned for later on in the week. We also have a Meet the Artist and then also Artists in Action events coming up this weekend. We have a pop-up art market on Sunday. And then we also have a kids chalk art contest on Sunday. And we are also doing an art auction. Whoosh. With all of that, we also have Tigard Drinks for Good that is starting this Thursday. So for more information on what's coming up with the Downtown Tigard, with the Farmers Market, please check out their websites for more information. Any questions? That was a lot. I apologize.
Thank you, Jessica. Any questions or comments from council? All right. Thank you and good to see you.
Nice to see you all.
All right. Councillor Shaw, are you back on the line? I know we lost you with technology issues. Just want to make sure you're back. So, okay. City Attorney Rahala, this is kind of a little unprecedented. Do I need to suspend the meeting till she's back, or can we continue?
So you have a quorum, you can continue. It looks like the next item is not a public hearing, so it's entirely up to you. Okay.
Let me see if I have another communication from her. It does not look like it. So the written public comment, City Recorder Krager, I believe we received 2 written comments, and they're actually both related to.
Hello.
Was that? I think that was City Recorder Krager trying to speak, but with an echo.
No, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, that might have been Councillor Shaw. Something was going on the screen. We did receive 2 comments and they both relate to the quasi-judicial public hearing later on in the meeting.
Okay, so we'll go to those at that time, particularly because of Councillor Shaw's lack of presence right now. And Mr. Nolep, can you let me know as soon as she's back? Because I don't know that I'm going to be able to see that with everything else I'm trying to manage. Okay, thank you. And City Recorder Krager, there were no other written public comments, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So we'll move on to phone-in public comment. Anyone that wishes to, the phone line is open now. That is 503-966-4101. Those with general comments should call in now. Callers wanting to call in for the public hearing, agenda item number 7, should call in the beginning of that agenda item. Mr. Nolep, are there any callers in the queue?
Mr. Mayor, at this time, there are no callers in the queue.
All right, all right. We'll give that just a few seconds here and let us know if that changes. We'll move on to council liaison reports. Councillor Newton, you want to go first?
Sure, I just have a couple of things. I'm obviously the Public Safety Advisory Board is going to be giving us a full report later on the agenda, so I won't take time on that, but we continue to have some very productive and engaging meetings, so I'm looking forward to their report. We did let a contract, the Community Development Block Grant Policy Advisory Board last Thursday for shower trailers that will be able to be located throughout Washington County. And I did ask that we have a regularly scheduled day and place for South County. So they're going to ask that happen so people will know Sherwood, Tualatin, Tigard when that shower trailer will be available. So
Councillor, who's going to be operating that?
It's a company that has experience. I don't remember. I'll look it up, but it's a company that's already operating in Hillsborough and has experience nationwide doing that. So it's an experienced group, and we only got one bid.
And then who's managing? I guess I was more getting at like who's managing the county.
Yes, the county. Yeah, the county. Yeah, they'll be managing that. So thanks. And then I guess the only other thing I would report is that I attended the farmers market on Sunday, was at the city booth. Lots of fun. We had lots of winners on the prize wheel. And I was there with Joanne Bankson, and we had over 100 people stop and chat with us. Most notably Council President Lube and her family. Anyway, it was good. And so if you haven't had that opportunity, it's a lot of fun. So anyway, that's my report.
All right, thank you. Councillor Goodhouse.
Yes, thank you. So National League of Cities is having their leadership conference that was last week and this week. And so last week was a focus on race, equity, and leadership. And this week, focusing on that along with transportation, different operations of the city. Tomorrow, City Manager Reimer and Nicole Henricks and myself are going to be presenting to the whole conference on Tigard and the ARP funding and what we're going to be, how we're getting, what we're going to be doing with that, and the process we're doing with the citizens and the budget committee. So that'll be pretty exciting. We were supposed to be doing that with another city, and it turns out it's only going to be us. And that's only for the only time slot, so that'll be fun, and we're starting to get more recognized around the nation, so that'll be exciting. And then there's a push with the National League of Cities for transportation funding with our federal legislators. So there's a big push to ask for everyone to sign on to it and try to get that funding taken care of as well. Those are the really big things with kind of the break and everything going on and not having a council meeting. So it seems like summer's a little bit more of a lull. I think just for kind of an update, Councillor Newton and I, she might say, we're still kind of going forward on working on the final little bits of the draft agreement with the LOT governing agreement. So we're getting close, some light at the end of the tunnel, getting our side done, and then we have a meeting on Monday, but we won't be going over that. So we're getting a little closer and probably be in the next couple of months meeting with Lake Oswego to work on that agreement.
Thank you. And I believe Councillor Shaw is now back on the line.
Yes. Oddly, I was in a room with Carol, Nadine, and Eduardo. So it looked like we had a separate meeting going on. But apologize for that. Looks like I'm back on.
Okay. All right. We were, just to reorient you, we are in the Council Liaison Reports section, and Councillor Newton and Councillor Goodhouse have gone so far. I'll let you go at the end if you want to get prepared, since sorry you're kind of feel bad jostling you back and forth in the agenda. Council President Lube, do you want to go now?
Sure, I don't have a lot. It's been fairly quiet on my side. The Parks and Rec Board did receive an initial look at the Parks Master Plan, and so just know that that's coming quickly towards us. So I'm excited with the information and what we're going to do with it.
Excellent.
Yeah, and that's all I have.
Youth Councilor Knott, do you have anything to report out? I know you're 13 days in, but you have any liaison reports you'd like to give? I guess I don't know if there's been a Youth Advisory Council meeting or anything.
I know that Tiger Youth TIAC met yesterday, and like 2 weeks ago, I was able to make the meeting 2 weeks ago, and we discussed having a blanket making drive, as well as they're currently trying to find a way that they can get involved with the movies in the park. I've also talked to them about potentially setting up city cleanup dates in the future, and we're still in kind of the planning stages for that. Thank you.
Excellent. All right, thank you. Councillor Shaw, would you like to go, or would you like me to go first?
No, you can go ahead, Mayor.
Okay. A couple of things from the Washington County Coordinating Committee meeting, which was earlier this week, yesterday. In fact, I wanted to let the council know and our community know that we are providing feedback on the state of Oregon's major transportation improvement project plan for 2024 to 2027. Yes, we do, or they do plan out that far. And we are providing feedback that in the enhanced highway category, that they have not identified 99W as a project that should be being seriously considered for that. And so we've pushed that agenda with the help of Dave Roth and myself and other staff. We are making that case. We got really robust support from all the South County mayors and frankly, even some other mayors during that meeting. So I felt good about that. There were a lot of ODOT staff that were at the meeting and listening to that and presenting. So I just wanted to sort of give an update there. And if you hear that coming up, either at the Region 1 ACT meeting or in other venues, I'll be advocating for it there at the Region 1 ACT meeting. I even kept my notes from my presentation so I can give it again at the Region 1 ACT meeting. So that's just a heads up. I also wanted to let you know that there's a little bit of, how do I want to describe this? Maybe I'll describe it as some tension around the congestion pricing study that Metro just completed. And the tension is this, it got some reaction from both the Washington County Coordinating Committee, and we actually had one of the Clackamas County commissioners attend the Washington County Coordinating Committee, which is that's not a typical situation, but Commissioner Savas, who's also the vice chair of the Region 1 ACT, attended and spoke about concern with, and this is where the tension's coming from. Metro has completed their congestion pricing study, and it's got a lot of interesting and useful information in it. I think most people sort of take it, and even the objective of the study was to provide information to help policymakers make future decisions about what we might do around any strategy for congestion pricing in the metropolitan area. The rub comes in that there's a report going to JPACT and then to the Metro Council, presumably, that recommends that the principles that are described in it be basically adopted into the transportation plan, the regional transportation plan. And many local elected leaders feel like that is a bit premature. So there is, and you know, I would say I get that there's a difference between those two things, right? I mean, fundamentally doing a study to conceptually understand the impacts of certain things, because the impacts were pretty, in some cases, were pretty surprising and unexpected. I think they make sense once you kind of study it, but that's the whole point of a study like this, not to take the initial study and direct staff to start incorporating it into the, you know, future transportation system plan updates. At least that's my kind of my take on things. So I just wanted to let you know about that little brouhaha. It's not a major thing, but at this point, but I did want you to all know about it. We also, along those lines, I received a request earlier today from Jamie Stasny from Clackamas County, asking for testimony supporting part of their 205 project, something that this is really to help with phase 1A money for the project for the spring of 2022. And before the release of the funding, the Federal Highways Administration requires that Metro, as our regional planning organization, amend the Metro Transportation Investment Plan, and that the Oregon Transportation Commission amend the State Transportation Investment Plan with the funding information. And so they're asking for testimony, either written or in person at a couple different meetings in the next couple of weeks. I don't know if I can make every single one of those. I think what I'm going to suggest, and City Manager Reimer, you're on this email too, I'm going to suggest that given that this is it is a regional project and something we care about, but it's also not like exactly in Tigard's backyard. I'm going to suggest that City Manager Reimer, you have staff prepare a written set of testimony for those 3 meetings. Is that something you can follow up on?
Absolutely, Mayor. We will handle that.
Okay. Council, are you supportive of that? I'm assuming so, but I guess I should check for agreement. Just continue supporting the 205 improvement efforts. Okay. The last thing I wanted to give an update on during my report out is that at the elected officials town hall meeting, or the meeting before the town hall with Senator Merkley, I raised the ARPA funding issue and the sort of significant change in the dollar amount that we were originally supposed to receive. And he was kind of, not only did he not know about it, and I was speaking directly to him, but he was kind of visibly concerned about it. And then I learned later their staff have done a bunch of follow-up on it, and he indicated that would happen during the meeting. But it's now to the point where the Undersecretary of the Treasury has agreed to meet with staff from Senator Merkley's office and myself and other Tigard City staff. So I just wanted to let you guys know that there may be some sort of an opportunity to try to, I don't know if appeal is the right word, but I think it's become pretty apparent that something is not quite right, given that Tualatin is half our size and has almost the exact same ARPA allocation. So just an update there, and that just came about this afternoon. So I don't have more information on exactly when that conversation is going to happen, but I plan to continue pushing it until it's made right. So it should be made right for all the 145 or so communities in the country that are in our situation. Doesn't seem just or appropriate. So let's see. That's the end of my report out, unless anyone's got questions on any of that. Sorry I spoke so much. All right, Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Mayor. And I may try logging off after my liaison report and logging back in to see if I can't be seen in person. But the only announcement I have is next Tuesday, July 20th, we'll be having a joint meeting with the Planning Commission. So there'll be some updates there. Don't want to steal any of their thunder, but I'm looking forward to that report, and they'll provide the update that I would have provided tonight. So thank you.
All right, thank you. And would you like us to, you're going to try logging off now?
I will try once, and then if I don't call, I can also call back in. I've been given the number from
Well,
Mike, so
do you
I will
just
try.
do you want to just stay on the audio? I mean, I think that's reasonable given the problems we're having tonight.
Good idea. I'll do that, Mayor.
Okay. All right, so we'll move on to the consent agenda, which is used for routine items, including minutes and approval of contracts or intergovernmental agreements. Information on each item is available on the city's website in the packet for this meeting. These items may be enacted in one motion without separate discussion. Council members may request that an item be removed by motion for discussion and separate action. Tonight on the consent agenda, we have proclaiming July as Parks and Recreation Month, and I think that is the only agenda item. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. City Recorder, please conduct a roll call vote.
Councillor Goodhouse.
Yes.
All right. Councillor Newton.
Yes.
Council President Lube.
Yes.
Councillor Shaw.
Yes.
Mayor Snyder.
Yes. All right, the consent agenda is approved unanimously. We'll move on to item number 5, which is to consider a resolution appointing members to the Committee for Community Engagement. And Director Robinson.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Nadine Robinson, the Central Services Director. Happy to be in front of you tonight. I'm here to recommend the appointment of 3 community members to the Committee for Community Engagement. Using the city's new board and committee recruitment process, the city received 6 applications for the committee, and in June, Councillor Newton and I interviewed all 6 community members. The applicant pool for the committee was again very good. There was a diversity in age and gender, race, education, work experience, and also geographic location within the community. So Councillor Newton and I are happy to bring before Council our recommendations for appointment through resolution. Each appointment will be for 4 years. We're recommending Shayla Kotadia. Shayla's professional backgrounds in education, specifically in the field of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. We're also recommending Christy Allen, whose professional background is in communications. Her current work focus is corporate responsibility, diversity, inclusion, and social equity. And for our final recommendation, we're recommending the reappointment of Dave Hanna. Dave's a long-term member of the committee, and he's currently our committee chair. He has a strong background in governance, and he's a strong facilitator. He's just a really great committee person, and we've appreciated so much the work that he's doing. And he's excited. We've been discussing our role and where the committee wants to head, and he's listed that as one of the things that he really wants to work on as he stays with the committee. So this concludes my presentation. Councillor Newton and I are happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much for that. And I understand that are all 3 of them in attendance tonight?
Well, like Councillor Shaw, I've been having some trouble with my technology tonight. And so I believe Christy is there. And I also saw Shayla earlier, but I'm not sure if they still are online.
Okay. Oh, there's.
Hello there. This is Christy Allen.
Hi, Christy. Thanks for joining and saying hi real briefly. And if Shayla's on, I'd encourage her to turn her camera on too and just briefly introduce herself, and Dave as well, if you're on by chance. I want to thank you all for volunteering and or re-upping your volunteering. And Council, is there a motion for approval of this resolution?
I move for approval of Resolution 2127.
I'll second the motion.
Been moved and seconded. City Recorder, please read the number and title of the resolution.
Resolution number 21-27, a resolution reappointing David Hanna and appointing Shayla Kadadia and Christy Allen as members of the Committee for Community Engagement.
And a roll call vote.
Councillor Goodhouse.
Yes.
Councillor Newton.
Yes.
Council President Lube.
Yes.
Councillor Shaw.
Yes.
Mayor Snyder.
Yes. All right. Resolution 21-27 passes unanimously. And Christy, thank you again for volunteering. And I will ask, as has become our COVID practice, since I can't hand you a tigered pin right in person, we will mail you one and hope to see you at a in-person meeting soon. So thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. We will move on to item number 6 on the agenda, which is to receive a Public Safety Advisory Board update. Management Analyst Ramos.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the introduction. With me tonight is the PSAB Chair, John Trin, and Vice Chair, Valerie Sasaki. They'll be giving a report out about the board's work since you approved their work plan and topic schedule on March 23rd. This is our first report on the board's work. They've gone through several topics and are making steady progress towards the June 2022 completion date. And I'd also like to take a moment to just encourage the public to keep staying engaged in their work. We have some very thoughtful members on the board, as you'll see tonight, and the public can access those at our website, tigard-or.gov/PSAB. And with that, I'll hand it over to John. I'll start sharing my screen.
John, you're
John,
muted.
you're muted.
You figure by a year of technology and virtual that I know to unmute myself, so apologize for that. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. It's good to be here. I'm honored to be able to present here with Valerie on the progress of the Public Safety Advisory Board. Again, my name is John Trin. I am CEO for New Narrative, formerly known as Lukdorf. We're a behavioral health organization that was founded in Tigard and operating for 45 years. And so our mission is really in terms of to provide clinical service resources and peer support and housing to folks who have mental health challenges, and so that they could develop the tool to thrive within the community and just not survive. So that's who I am. I'm representing the mental health advocate. I'm also a person of color, and I'm honored to be appointed to this board. And I just want to hand it over to Valerie to introduce herself.
Sure. Thank you so much, John. So my name is Valerie Sasaki, and I'm one of the community representatives on the board. And I really appreciate also being appointed to serve. I'm a tax and business attorney with the law firm of Samuels, Yole and Cantor in Portland, although we have offices in other areas, including like Oswego. So, you know, and as a fourth generation Japanese American, it really appreciate the care and attention that this council has given to these issues, and also that the city representatives and the police department representatives have given to really facilitating what I think have become some very meaningful discussions on some pretty touchy issues. So I look forward to, well, we'll talk more about what we've been talking about, but then I look forward to continuing this dialogue.
We're going to talk about in terms of Unit 2, which is the second unit of the work that the board is doing. It's around the Tigard officer journey. And just to remind folks in terms of the mission of this board is to improve the life experience of all people in Tigard so that everyone enjoys the same safety and privilege through a comprehensive review of the practices and procedure in the City of Police Department, municipal court, and social justice initiatives. With that, I'm going to ask Eduardo to advance the slide. So in June, we talked about in terms of body-worn camera program, we talked about police hiring and police officer training. I just want to touch base on a little bit on each one of them. And then I asked Valerie to chime in if she want to add something or if I missed anything. One of the work we did was really review the policy around body-worn camera. And I want to thank Commander McDonald for pulling this policy together. As board member, we wanted to make sure that the policy not only protect the community, but also the department. The intent with the policy itself was to create, I think Valerie mentioned in one of the meetings, a neutral record of activities as the law enforcement officers are out in the community. And as a member of the board, when we review the policy, we want to make sure the policy is clear within the areas of the policy that are a little unclear. We want to make sure there's some clarity within those policy. Some of the areas that we looked at and recommended to the department was to look at the formatting of the data file and the length of how long we keep the data file and for what purpose. It was a positive discussion, and I really appreciate the staff openness to consider our recommendation. Valerie, you have anything to add in this bullet point?
Yeah, I mean, I want to thank the council for their support for the new technology that the police department was able to adopt, you know, in the prior budget cycle, because I think it's really important. And I think we've seen with the July 4th response, you know, as the sergeant mentioned, that, you know, it has a very immediate positive impact on the ability of our police officers to do their job and to create a neutral record. You know, a number of us chose to take a deeper dive into on an individual basis with Commander McDonald and talk with him about, you know, the policy, because they really put a lot of work into going through and updating the policy that they have, you know, surrounding body-worn cameras to, you know, incorporate things relating to the new technology. And I think to the extent that we have recommendations, which we've passed on to the chief and to Commander McDonald to review, you know, with City Attorney Rahala, and I think with some of the Washington County folks as well, you know, they relate to making it a more of a standalone document so that it can be easy for the public to understand what's going to be done with the data, how it's going to be preserved. And, you know, and I think everybody that we've talked to has this value that, you know, the record that it creates should be neutral and untampered with. And, you know, so I think just making that a little bit clearer in the language, you know, and I think part of it was just improving our understanding of what the police policies are, in that they are not standalone documents typically. So there may be additional things that need to be done, because as we read through them, there was some language that I thought, you know, oh, that's kind of squishy language. But the policies are really the why, and then the procedures that the department has internally, we learned, are the how. So the how these things are implemented and how, you know, when the decision is made to turn on a body camera, because these are all issues that have had a lot of currency in the national media and in the discussions that we've had around racial justice. So we just want to make sure that we are, you know, Tigard is creating a neutral record that is protective of the public interest and also protective of the private interest. So, but it's been such a positive experience to work with the police department, and Commander McDonald in particular, you know, really took the extra time to help us understand so that we could make meaningful recommendations.
We also looked at police officer hiring practices, and there was a lot of thoughts and discussion that was put into the discussion itself in terms of how police officers are hired within the city of Tigard. It is a great. I think it is a great that the department screened culturally competency with it as the practice of hiring police officer, and so that was great to be able to hear that. I was surprised to see that there were between 13 officers that speak another language other than English, and the department can represent 7 other spoken language within the department itself. So that was really impressive to see. and there is a process in terms of hiring, which is that's encouraged that as a board member of the Safety Advisory Board or anyone, I think, could also sit in on an oral board for candidates that are wanting to be police officer within the city of Tigard, that you could be part of that panel and be able to listen in and ask questions. So that was very exciting to see, and encourage folks who would like to be part of that to reach out to Eduardo or the board, and we could get some more information.
Can I just leap in briefly here? So
Sure.
One of the things that I thought was really impressive about the particular unit when we talked about police hiring was we had Brandy, and I'm sorry, I'm blanking on her last name, from the city's HR department, come and talk with us about how, you know, over the last few years, they've really changed the focus, not changed the focus, but added an additional layer of focus to cultural competency and situational awareness and in the interview process at multiple steps throughout. So, you know, John mentioned the initial hiring panels, which were great. And I had the opportunity to sit in on one, and I highly recommend the experience because it really does give you an idea of the diversity of candidates that Tigard encounters when they're trying to hire for the police department. You know, and just from ages and experiential backgrounds, there was one candidate that I probably would have hired to work at my law firm if we had been able to do it, but if I'd been able to persuade him to go to law school. But so I do think that, you know, the hiring process, and my takeaway was that the hiring process has not been a static one for the city of Tigard. And so to the extent that there have been, you know, we learn from our mistakes. And so to the extent that there are things that we can do to improve the hiring process, I was happy to see that they've taken steps to do them.
We also looked at in terms of police officer training, which is an important piece as folks are becoming hired as police officer within the city of Tigard. One of the areas that is passionate to me is around terms of working with people who have mental health challenges. And so I was very happy to hear that there's a lot of different training around crisis intervention training, de-escalation, those kind of stuff that are important when dealing with someone who are in a mental health crisis. And so we were able to listen and hear from the county mental health department, Kristen Burke, regarding the work that the county is doing to provide mental health clinicians, pairing them with the sheriff department as part of the team called Mental Health Response Team. And I'm happy to hear in terms of there's a push to increase the budget, to increase the team by twice as large. So from a two team to maybe up to a 14 member. So that was exciting to be able to hear that work that's being done by the county and also the sheriff department. Valerie?
Yeah, and this unit in particular is one of the reasons why it was so valuable to have John's perspective on this, because he was able to share resources from his background and his, you know, clinical experience with the rest of us, you know, as we're looking at, because I think a lot of the biggest immediate challenges that the police department faces is, you know, they are the first responders in a lot of these situations. And so, you know, how do we ensure that, you know, not only is cultural competency at play, but do they have the tools and the support that they need to adequately police some pretty challenging populations? You know, and those challenges have only grown in the period of time that we've been serving on this board, due to the sort of the economic stresses of the pandemic and responses in other jurisdictions to people who are in mental crisis. So, you know, so I think it's been really helpful to have John's perspective on this, and I really want to thank him and applaud his willingness to share his experience with us.
Thanks, Valerie. Hey, Eduardo, next slide, please.
Oh, before you go to the next slide, can I just talk? Sorry, I just want to mention about police legitimacy. So this is actually the unit that we're on currently. You know, we had a good discussion about use of force and some of the challenges involved in use of force last night, and I expect that discussion will continue. You know, this is been a hot button issue, and it was very useful to see what the police department has done as far as training with respect to in these areas, both from a role-playing perspective as well as from a, educating your people on the gun range and educating your people in other situations. But I expect that this is going to be an area where we're going to have some additional discussions going forward. So that's where we are in the process at this point.
Yes, thank you, Valerie. Next slide, please. So some accomplishment, I will talk about some accomplishment that as the board, as a community, we have seen with being part of the Public Safety Advisory Board. We looked at terms of supporting the body cam board camera program, and I appreciate in terms of the city council approving the budget for that. We sent our equity and anti-racism by asking questions through the equity lens. And I think different board members are very, very passionate around this area and able to speak up. And we encourage everyone to really look at it from a different lens, so that we are really centering equity and also anti-racism. We did community engagement through the farmer market, and I know that Councilwoman Liz talked about hosting the city table. I was there one Saturday. It was a great event to be able to be out there and meeting and see community members and also council members who attended the market. I appreciate in terms of the council pushing approving the resolution to support Asian American Pacific Islander community and condemning all form of anti-Asian sentiment as it relates to COVID-19. So that was great to be able to have you all support in that side of things. Valerie, was there anything else?
I mean, I think it's the discussions have been really transformative for my understanding of the community. And I think that we look forward to having additional discussions with members of our community. We unfortunately weren't able to get to our engagement discussion last night because we were so involved in the use of force discussion. But, our individual board members have been reaching out and having some informative discussions with other members of our community, both in our social circles, in our business circles, in our professional circles. So that will continue, but to the extent that other folks would like to engage with us, I think we are really trying to do that and appreciate their participation. So and I will be at the farmers market this weekend. So
nice. That's all. I just also want to call it that we also had 2 new members, Sean, I want to say Sturdryer, a community representative, and also Nick Jarmer, a alternate community representative that also joined the board. So it's great to be having 2 new board members. Next slide, please. So what's next for us? So when we look at in terms of what's next for us, we're going to look into Unit 3. We're going to look at in terms of police appearance, that in terms of including clear identification. We'll look at in terms of color and style of the uniform, the color of the cars. We also will look at the topic of traffic stop, the pretext of stop. We'll review traffic violation enforcement protocol to evaluate if the communities and the officer could be safer using technology advanced method as an alternative to initiating a traffic stop. And we're also going to look at the use of force. So again, back to use of force, banning the use of chokehold, re-implementing the force continuum as requested by hashtag 8CANWAIT versus current Graham versus Connor standard. There's also a look at to reevaluating deadly force assumption and qualified immunity. So those are some of the next steps that we have on our plate to work towards, and also electing the new chair and vice chair. So myself and Valerie will be stepping down, hoping to have someone who could step up and be chair and vice chair for this great board.
Sure, and I encourage people to, the website that Eduardo and the team of the city maintain on our community has a lot of really great information, including the action item topic schedules that, because Unit 3 is focused on the community experience, but we still have quite a ways to get through in Unit 2, I believe, in some of these topics. So, my hope is that by the time we report back to it will be a new chair and vice chair. who will be elected to do so. But again, thank you for the opportunity to present this. And I think that if you have, is there another slide? I think if you've got questions, John and I are happy to address them.
Yes.
Thank you both very much. And we'll go to the council for any comments or questions. Councillor Newton, do you want an opportunity to speak first? Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say I'm so grateful to my colleagues on the council for letting me serve on this committee. The meetings are amazing. The group is thoughtful. They're respectful. They ask great questions, make great comments. It's changed my view of the community as well. I mean, I just leave every meeting thinking differently about how the decisions we make affect community members. And I just really appreciate the frank and honest comments that the community members make. So I'm very appreciative and I feel very fortunate to be participating. The discussions are great, and I just really appreciate all the members and encourage everybody in the community to take a look at those, the opportunity to look at those past meetings if you haven't been able to do that. So I want to thank the council, and I also want to thank all of my fellow committee members for just their heartfelt participation. So thank you.
Well, Councillor Newton, thank you for representing the council on the board. I know that's a big time commitment and much appreciated. So thank you. Other members of the council with questions or comments? Council President Lube.
Thank you. I was searching for the official raise hand button while I was raising my actual hand. This is such a special board for us here in this community, and I really think we were ahead of the curve in establishing it, and it was something that we were really thoughtful about establishing. And it takes a community that is vulnerable and honest and bringing their lived experience and really shedding light on a lot of these different topics, and having, a police department actively engaged. We are so fortunate in Tiger to be able to come to this table, these board meetings coming from a place of honesty and have, coming with everybody with the best of intentions to come and to learn and to share. And it's really powerful to watch and to really learn. And so thank you for being there. Thank you for your time and your vulnerability and your honesty. It's really, I point to it a lot when talking with, friends of mine across the United States and other people in different communities around Portland about what we're doing. And it's really meaningful work. So thank you.
Other members of the council on Youth Councillor Nog.
I would like to reiterate what has been said. I think that this is amazing work, and I really want to thank you for your time today. I wasn't aware of all of the great conversations that we've been having as a community. So I'm going to go back and look at some of the past meetings as well. My question was, have you guys done outreach to youth of color in the community? And if so, I could reach out to people that I know who might be willing to help. And if there's anything I could do to help, let me know.
Thank you so much. We have had Youth Councillor Calderon has been participating, and Abdirahim Mohammed has been participating, but more participation is always going to be valuable. So if one of the units, if you look at the work plan, one of our units is specifically focused on what can we do to improve the lived experience of our youth community members, because I live right by Tigard High School, and I see students going into the building in the mornings, and I think this high school is a million times more diverse than my high school, which admittedly was Lake Ridge. But and so I think it's such a blessing to have such a diverse youth population. And so to the extent that we can be doing anything, or there are things, there are conversations that we need to have, I really want to be open to those. And I think I speak for everybody else on the board when I say that, because there's a reason why it's a cornerstone of our work plan, is because we view it as being so important. So thank you so much.
And Youth Councillor Nog, I would also say that if you want to get more engaged with the council, with the Public Safety Advisory Board, I should say, I think you should feel free to do that. I mean, we did ask Youth Councillor Calderon to stay for continuity reasons, etc. But I don't think you should feel like you can't be engaged too. You may not be an official member, but you either can help connect other members of the youth community, or even participate on some level yourself. I think that would be welcomed.
We'd love to have you.
Councillor Shaw, you have your hand up.
I do. Thank you so much, Mayor, for recognizing the hand since I can't be seen. I just wanted to give a shout out to both Valerie and John for all the hard work that they put in, and for the committee members. But I know you two have put in many, many hours. So just a big thank you and a shout out to you both.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Newton.
Oh, shoot. Mr. Mayor, yeah, I just want to also give a shout out. I know John and Valerie did as well, but to the members of our police department that are participating, their receptiveness, their the information that they're presenting, the questions they'll answer. So I wanted to give them a shout out too, because they're being just as honest and candid and thoughtful as our board members. So I wanted to make sure that I gave them a shout out too. Thank you.
I have honestly always felt like our police department reflects the values of our community, but I didn't have as good of a way of demonstrating or proving it. But the points that have been made tonight, and Councillor Newton, the point you just made to me really is a true sort of outcome indicator to me that our police department does mirror our community's values. So we'll recognize that. I also want to point out, and City Manager Reimer, I think you can perhaps speak to this, but we've applied for an award or a grant related to the Public Safety Advisory Board. Is that correct? Sorry to put you on the spot with that.
Sorry about that, Mayor. I believe you're talking about the Conference U.S. Mayor's application that we put in. Is that the?
Yes.
Yeah. I'd have to find the exact specifics, but I can follow up to make sure that I'm answering this correctly.
Well, and if other staff are more appropriate to answer, that's fine too. But I didn't mean to put you on the spot if someone else could answer.
I also have to follow up to make sure it was exactly that. Eduardo may know.
Yeah, I see Assistant City Manager Nyland has been. Would you like to speak on that?
Just confirming what City Manager Reimer said. We did submit an application for a grant through the Conference of Mayors, and we should be hearing, I think we'll be hearing in the next couple of months, but we got that application in, and thanks to a lot of the team for helping submit what we felt was a strong application.
Well, thank you for making that happen. Mr. Trin, Ms. Sasaki, anything else you wanted to add this evening?
I'd just like to say thank you to the council members and you, Mayor, for your support in this board. And it's a very important work that is close to my heart and close to many board member heart. I want to also shout out to the council member Liz Newton for your support and being part of this group, and also echo your comment regarding the support of the police department, the chief, Commander McDonald's, and the team out there in terms of being part of the staff, being part of this group, because it's a very important work that we're doing. And I appreciate all the board members that are part of this Public Safety Advisory Board, because we all have a passion and we all are passionate in the work that we do in terms of ending cultural and institutional racism, and how do we do that work and really look at in terms of law enforcement the work that we do within the city of Tiger. So thank you. Anything else you want to add, Valerie?
You know, you just said that so well. I would just add that thank you to Eduardo and the rest of the city staff, because you have the unenviable job of herding the cats who all want to run in different directions. So yeah, but thank you. And John, I would just reiterate what John said. We really appreciate all of you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for tonight, and we'll look forward to more soon.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to item number 7 on our agenda, which is a quasi-judicial public hearing to consider an ordinance adopting Oregon 217 Auxiliary Lanes Comprehensive Plan Amendment and Sensitive Lands Review, CPA 2020-00003 and SLR 2020-00010. And with that, I will open the public hearing. And City Attorney Rahala, the hearing procedures, please. City Attorney Rahala, you are muted. If you're speaking, I can't quite tell.
Okay. Are we there? All right, we'll try this again.
Yes,
This
the
is
video
a
is off. You might.
quasi-judicial- It says my video is on. I'm just gonna leave it.
Yeah, I see your video, but it's not real great. But go ahead.
Okay. This is a quasi-judicial land use proceeding. Council's decision must be based on the following substantive criteria. Tigard Community Development Code, Chapter 18.5.
City Attorney Rahala, we've lost you again. And we will need to wait. We need to conduct the quasi-judicial public hearing in a very prescribed manner and order. So I don't think we have a backup city attorney available.
Okay, let's try this again.
Okay.
All right. This is a quasi-judicial land use proceeding. Council's decision must be based on the following substantive criteria. Tigard Community Development Code, Chapter 18.510. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward the relevant approval criteria described in the staff report or other criteria in the plan or land use regulation that apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue clearly enough so that council understands and can address the issue precludes an appeal to LUBA on that issue. Failure of the applicant to object to a condition of approval may preclude an action for damages in circuit court. Members of the City Council will be asked whether they have any conflicts of interest. If a council member has an actual conflict, the council member cannot participate. Council members must declare any contacts about this case with a member of the public. Council members must also declare if they have independent knowledge of relevant facts, such as from a visit to the site in question. A council member who describes ex parte contacts or independent information shall state whether the contact has impaired his or her impartiality of the member to vote on the matter. After the discussion of ex parte contacts and conflicts, any person may challenge the participation of a council member or rebut any statements made. The council member in question may respond to such a challenge. Thank you.
All right, thank you, City Attorney Rahala. I will ask the City Council now if anyone has conflicts of interest or had any ex parte contacts on this case.
You mean by like driving on 217? Does that count, or I think because we've all driven on there, so I don't think otherwise.
So that is not specific enough, I would consider, for an ex parte. If you visited the specific site, in question in terms of the neighborhood impacted, that would be different, but just driving on 217 doesn't count.
Okay.
All right, so any conflicts of interest or ex parte contacts? All right, the next is an opportunity from the public to either rebut or challenge a counselor's ex parte contact. Callers may call 503-966-4101 now. Mr. Nollop, can you check with any of the callers as to whether or not they wish to challenge a counselor's participation?
Mr. Mayor, I can pass them through to you, and we can ask them. How many are there? There are three callers in the queue at this time.
City Attorney Rahala, do I need to do that? Do we need to bring each of them in just to ask that? Probably.
I would say if that could be the first item that they address in their testimony, that would cover it. I don't think we need to call them in separately and then go back to testimony.
Okay, I guess I'll just ask a procedural question about that. If that's the case, I don't think anyone's going to be challenged, but if they were to be challenged, they then shouldn't be involved in the discussion or even the questioning of the applicant or the staff, right? I mean, that's I guess my concern is that couldn't that be considered sort of tainting the hearing?
Potentially, it's a high bar to disqualify counsel, and counsel would have the opportunity to evaluate that, but you're right, it does kind of put it out of order.
If you're not concerned, I'm not going to be. So you're not concerned as long as we just ask at the beginning?
Correct.
Okay. Then we'll move on. Planner Bildow, staff report, please.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors. My name is Monica Billadou, and I'm Associate Planner with the city. The item before you tonight is the OR 217, the Auxiliary Lanes Comprehensive Plan Amendment. So I'll give you a quick summary of the project, but I'll keep my presentation brief, and ODOT is hopefully with us, and they will go into a little bit more detail. So Oregon Department of Transportation, ODOT, is requesting a comprehensive plan amendment to the wetland and stream corridors map that we have, and a sensitive lands review for the proposed OR 217 auxiliary lanes. And ODOT proposes adding these auxiliary lanes to OR 217 north and south in our community between 99W and Southwest Greenberg Road. So the results of these auxiliary lanes have impacts to 0.78 acres of tigered significant wetland. And then there's also a 4.67 acre impact to wetland buffer vegetated corridor. Now, understanding that is mostly existing travel lanes. The way that we map wetlands, significant wetlands in Tigard, is we map the wetland and then we have a 50-foot buffer. So that's why we also have this large number that we're somewhat cleaning up, because we're requesting to take that out of the map as well. So our total request is 5.45 acres that we're requesting removal from the wetlands inventory, but only the 0.78 acres is actual wetland impact. Now quickly, here's a map just showing the general area to understand where it is in our community. And then quickly, the project need that ODOT has requested is to ultimately address the regional safety and the mobility needs. And ODOT is focusing on these low cost, effective, and immediate solutions to improve some of these bottleneck locations on 217. So the important part of this analysis of the comp plan amendment was we require a Goal 5 ESEE analysis, and that's required to evaluate the trade-offs of allowing this impact. and the different levels of protection for our natural resources that we're impacting. So the evaluation process involves identifying, fully allowing, limiting, and then prohibiting these conflicting uses, and kind of what impact it will have on the natural resource. And ultimately, they had a team that our code requires, and their team concluded that limiting the conflicting use would result in the most beneficial kind of consequence overall in the three protection scenarios for the city. So as part of their package as well, sorry about that. As part of their mitigation package, ODOT will purchase mitigation bank credits to replace the wetland and the functions and values of that wetland due to the loss of the project impacts. And then those bank credits will be purchased within the Bobcat Marsh Wetland Mitigation Bank, which is not directly in our community, but it's in the same wetland, it's in the Tualatin watershed. So, and then the remaining mitigation they're proposing will be done on site through revegetation. So that's kind of what it adds up. I know in the AIS, you guys have a table, and in the staff report. So those kind of detail out the numbers. So in summary, we went to the Planning Commission on June 21st, and they did make a unanimous vote in favor for this project. And then we are here before you tonight that staff recommends that City Council adopt by ordinance the proposed comprehensive plan amendment and sensitive lands review. And this would thereby remove the 5.45 acres from the significant wetlands inventory described in the Tigard Wetland and Stream Corridor map. And that concludes staff's presentation for tonight, and we're available to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have the applicant planning to provide testimony as well.
Yes, that's correct.
All right. So ODOT staff, if you want to introduce yourself, I'm going to hold questions from the council for both staff and the applicant until the end of your presentation. So go ahead.
Thank you. So my name is Reed Stapleton. I'm a land use planner with Dow. We are representing ODOT, and I believe Kelly Martin is on the call as well. So we have a presentation that we're going to share. Kelly's going to kick things off, and I will follow up on her presentation, and then I think we'll leave it open to questions at that point. So I'm going to share my screen here and let Kelly kick things off.
Hi, I'm Kelly Martin. I am the ODOT project manager who is in charge of the design of this project. And you want to go to the next slide? And one more. So I'm just going to give you a project overview. Here is a map of the project area, and I just want to make sure that everybody on the call is familiar with what this project is. So quickly, I'll just go through the highlights, and then if you guys do have questions about the project, I'm happy to answer them. The purpose of the project is to improve safety and to help prevent bottlenecks on Oregon 217. Between Beaverton Hillsdale Highway and Oregon 99W by adding auxiliary lanes. The issue is that there are 10 interchanges in just over 7 miles. The short merging distances and the high traffic volumes in the area lead to merging conflicts and high crash rates and travel delays. The schedule is for construction to begin in late 2021 and continue through 2025 in different phases. The overall cost of the project is $134 million. Most of it is funded by the Keep Oregon Moving House Bill 2017. And And then there's partnership with the city of Beaverton, Washington County. There's bike ped funds and then some additional bridge funds that were added. We have done coordination with other agencies. We've had multiple meetings with the city of Tigard, the city engineer and their staff to discuss the project and to coordinate with city projects. We've been working directly with Zach Morris, who has dispersed our plan sets for review and feedback at the DAP advanced and final plan milestones. And we have presented to Tigard City Council twice, once in August of 2019 and then April of 2021. The auxiliary lanes help reduce bottlenecks by giving drivers more space and time to merge safely. Southbound auxiliary lane will run from Beaverton Hillsdale Highway to Oregon 99W, and then the northbound lanes will run from 99W to Greenberg Road, and then a second lane will continue through to Shoals Ferry Road. This project will include some 24/7 single lane closures and full one-way directional closures on 217. We will do a lot of outreach before these happen so that people are aware it's going to happen. Bike and ped improvements. We are going to widen sidewalks on the north side of Denny Road from Fano Creek Trail to 105th. We're extending the Fano Creek Trail along the east side of 217 so that it connects up to Allen Boulevard. There will be new sidewalks and bike lanes on the northern Hall Boulevard overpass. We're widening Hall Boulevard 19 feet to the north. And then we are replacing the southern Hall Boulevard overpass, which will include new sidewalks and bike lanes. And the southern Hall Boulevard overpass will need to be rebuilt to make room for the auxiliary lanes to pass underneath. The vehicle lanes in both directions will be closed for 6 to 9 months. The bike and ped access will be open through construction because we'll be putting in a temporary bridge across 217. The new overpass will be earthquake resilient, ADA compliant, and have wider sidewalks and bike lanes. Next slide. So this just kind of shows our schedule, where we've been and where we're going. We are currently, the project is out for bid right now, and we anticipate having a contractor on board by November and hope to be able to start construction late this year. So that is, we have a lot of outreach planned in future steps as well. And I will wait till the end to see if you guys have any other questions about the project as a whole.
So in addition to the outreach that Kelly mentioned, specifically for the land use request, we had a public meeting on August 7th, 2019. So this was old school neighborhood meeting before the days of virtual meetings, and posted public notice signs along the corridor. We had over 350 invites mailed, and we had about 16 neighbors attend. And interestingly, although the nature of the land use request is really specific to these significant wetland impacts and the fact that these wetlands are mapped in the city's comprehensive plan, I guess not surprisingly, a lot of the questions really had to do with general construction, overall project impacts, phasing, traffic control, those sorts of things. So there weren't as many, I guess, wetland specific, natural resource specific questions as you might imagine. But that meeting was held again almost a couple of years ago now, prior to the filing of the application. So Monica did a really good job of summarizing the application and the request. So I'm not going to, go over that. I'm not going to repeat much of what she said, but in summary, there's 6 mapped significant wetlands that are mapped and within the city's comprehensive plan that are affected by the project. And the overall area of impact can seem fairly large, but when you look at what is actual wetland, that number winnows down quite a bit, and I'll explain that a little bit more. Part of that is because the city has areas mapped that are not currently wetland, and there's also a 50-foot vegetated corridor that extends into existing built features associated with 217, and those are considered part and parcel of what is, quote unquote, significant wetland. So when you actually look at what is mapped wetland, the number or the area of actual wetland out in the field that's impacted is, a fraction of the wetland in the corridor and a fraction of the mapped impact. Mitigation is planned for all the impacts, including the vegetated corridor impacts, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well. So this map, it's, excuse me, it's a little bit of a crude map, but it gives you an idea of where the wetlands are. You've got a fairly large complex of wetlands associated with Ash Creek near Greenberg Road along the highway corridor. And then again, there's a complex of wetland associated with Red Rock Creek down just south of the Costco and in that corridor in that segment of the highway corridor. So the impacts are really focused in those two primary areas. Now this slide summarizes what I probably not so articulately was trying to explain earlier, which is that of wetland that occurs within the project area, and these are mapped wetlands that our scientists went out in the field and delineated. There's about 103,000 square feet of wetland within the overall general project corridor. There are actual impacts to those wetlands of about 33,000 square feet. So that's the roughly 0.7 acre area that Monica mentioned. However, when you look at the fact that the way that the code defines significant wetlands and the fact that that has to include a 50-foot buffer, the area of impact grows significantly to that 203,000. Anyway, when you look at that, approximately 2/3 of the wetlands within the general project corridor will remain after this project, and the extent of impact is relatively minor compared to that larger extent, the greater extent of wetland immediately adjacent to the highway. And this table identifies what those impacts are for the 6 wetlands, the 6 significant wetlands in the corridor and in the project area, and how the mitigation is going to be assigned. The majority of that mitigation is going to occur at the Bobcat Marsh Mitigation Bank, which is in the kind of Lower Tualatin area, Lower Tualatin River Basin. And the vegetated corridor would be mitigated both at the mitigation bank site as well as within available on-site areas within the project corridor. So it's a mix of both the mitigation bank site as well as the on-site areas that are available. So that concludes our presentation. For the public and folks who might be listening in, there's more information here about how you can learn more about the project and find out more about the project schedule and elements of the project that Kelly described. But with that, we'll put a pause on this, and we have our project team available to answer any questions you have, including folks who are way more in the weeds, no pun intended, on the natural resources impacts, and our civil engineering lead as well. So I appreciate your time tonight.
Well, thank you. And council, I do want to open it up to questions only of staff and the applicant at this time, and make sure that we stick to questions and not to deliberation. So who has questions of staff? Councillor Newton, and then we'll go to Youth Councillor Nog after that.
I have a question of the last presenter. I'm sorry, I don't remember her name. about could you move back to the mitigation chart that you just showed? Yeah, just right there. Okay, so for the public's benefit, could you just really quickly summarize what you're talking about in terms of why, there's the Bobcat Marsh mitigation and then there's the on-site mitigation, and how and why that works? Because I've had some questions about that from the public. Could you do that?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
So I can take a stab at it, or James Stupful, who is our kind of natural resources permitting experts on the call as well. James, I don't know if you want to tackle that.
Yeah, happy to jump in. So in summary, the wetlands that we delineated on site following core and DSL criteria, those wetlands are mitigated at Bobcat Marsh. So that's a direct wetland impact per the typical definition for state, federal clean water services. The City of Tigard's significant wetland boundary definition includes associated buffer. And so then we have to look at that buffer or vegetated corridor, as Clean Water Services calls it. And we look at the ways to mitigate that. So a portion of it, trying to find the clearest way to explain this, but the buffer that is mitigated at the marsh is buffer that was adjacent to wetland that was impacted. So it no longer exists. And so all of those impacts are grouped, mitigated at the bank. Those buffers that weren't mitigated at the bank, then we mitigated on site at a couple of locations along the corridor. So that's the general breakdown.
Councillor Newton, did you have any other questions?
No, I don't. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Youth Councillor Nog.
Hi, so my question was, by 2025, after the project would be completed, is there any plan as to how to combat the increased localized pollution impacting the rest of the wetlands as well?
I might ask for clarification. When you say increased pollution, from what sense?
I would probably say CO2 and just vehicle pollution and like noise pollution as well.
James, do you want to tackle that, or I can?
Yeah, I can offer some generalized response here. So one of the biggest ways that we are mitigating future pollution is through stormwater treatment. Currently, a very large portion of the highway goes untreated and it drains right off the highway into the adjacent wetlands. As part of our project, we will capture not only our new impervious surface and treat that to current standards, but also the vast majority of the existing untreated impervious. So it will result in a net increase in water quality as discharged from the highway in the future. Regarding the CO2 emissions, that's not something that we evaluated specifically for this project, but it will result in a net decrease in the congestion and the traffic slowdowns that we see that are caused by all of this bottlenecking. So we do anticipate that in addition to the dramatic safety increase along the corridor, the elimination of those rear end collisions due to the merging and weaving, we should see a decrease in the delays, which results in increased CO2 emissions. I'm not sure what other items you might want me to try to cover. I'm happy to answer any more questions if you have any more specific items you want me to talk about.
Youth Councillor Nog, does that cover your question adequately?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Other council questions? I guess I'll ask one since I'm not seeing any other hands going up right now. And maybe this is more of a question for our staff, but it could be for the ODOT presenters. this, I think it's a little difficult to understand how, if you think about this from the year 2021, how we have freeway constructed or parts of freeway constructed in significant wetlands. So I'm assuming that if the freeway were constructed now to begin, like initially, this wouldn't be allowed to be this way. Is that the way to think about this? But it was, built before these regulations were in place around wetlands. I guess I just want to make sure people have a big picture view of that too.
Yeah, I'll start, Reed. I think the answer to that is likely the approvals that ODOT would have had to get to build this highway through the wetland complex that existed at the time it was built would have been much more onerous today than they were in the past. I'm not saying that the highway couldn't or wouldn't have been built, but there would have been a lot of thought put into it. And while I doubt there was mitigation for the loss of wetlands at the time of construction in the past, there would have been today. And so those significant impacts would have been offset if they would have been approved. And that's something important to note. We're really hemmed in with our project today due to the alignment that was chosen in the past. It unfortunately crosses several large wetland complexes, and the best we can do is minimize our impacts by narrowing our corridor, which is what we've done at every opportunity. So I hope that answers the question. We would have had a tall order to get something like this approved in large wetland complexes for sure.
Okay. And staff, I guess this is probably more of a City of Tigard or city attorney staff question. This issue around using the mitigation bank, that's permitted in our code, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. All right. Any other council questions? Councilor Shaw.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Appreciate the update and the presentation from ODOT. Seeing that the last public outreach was August 7th of 2019, I'm assuming, and maybe I shouldn't assume, but my question would be, do you have a robust public outreach that would be starting should this be approved? And if so, when would that start? Look at you, Kelly, thank you.
And we have done more outreach beyond 2019. We had an online open house that ran November and December of 2020. And we're going to do another pre-construction open house probably somewhere either in December or January, February, depending on when we have the best information available as we're kicking off construction. So if you see just under the 2021, we show the online open house. I think it ran for 6 weeks. We've also done several, and these are just highlight like big open houses. I've been doing a lot of council of government meetings and smaller, anybody who wants us to come and talk to their group, we have been saying yes. And so we do plan, we still have over $1 million budgeted towards public outreach for the construction process during the construction phase of this project. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you very much.
Okay. Councilor Shaw, any other questions?
No, thank you, Mayor. That concludes my questions.
All right. Seeing no further, we will move on to public testimony. We received 2 pieces of written testimony that were received on time. They are both from Jim Long, the representative from the CPO 4M, the Metzger Citizen Participation Organization. Council, have you received both of those and reviewed them? Okay. And I don't know that I can adequately summarize those concisely. I think the bottom line is those pieces of public testimony are asking for on-site mitigation of all of the wetland impacts. Planner Bilodeau, is that a reasonable summary, or City Attorney Rahala, do you have anything else that you think needs to be summarized on that feedback on the written testimony?
No, I think that's yeah, sorry, Monica, I think that's accurate. As long as council has read them, they'll be entered into the land use record.
Okay. I would like the staff to get ready and prepared to answer the questions about what it would take to do that, or whether that's possible. Once we get to response to testimony by staff, I'd like that to be prepared. Mr. Nullup, you said we had 3 callers earlier. I guess I will also share that we had one additional written public comment that was sent in when a caller was having trouble with technology. So I may allow that into the record if she is not able to testify in person, and that is Elise Shearer. So we'll see if she's one of the 3 callers, and if not, I'm going to suggest procedurally that we admit her written testimony, and I guess I can read it into the record if need be. So Mr. Nullup, first caller, please.
Sure, Mr. Mayor, and we have a total of 4 callers at this time. Callers, you will hear a beep when you are live with the City Council and during the hearing.
Hi.
All right. So first caller, please state your name for the record.
Hi, this is Sue Bilesy. I'm at 11755 Southwest 114th in Tigard. I've lived here for about 30 years. I've worked as a wildlife biologist for over 35 years, much of it in Oregon. I'm very concerned about the loss of any additional wetlands. We've already lost 7 acres of wetlands along 217 when West was built. And some of that, and I'm very aware of that, was mitigated on an existing mitigation site. So I'm not crazy about any additional loss of wetlands, including the scrub shrub habitat in some areas. I'm going to promote mitigating on an existing piece of Tigard land. There's a piece that Mr. Long has recommended in his write-up that includes Ash Creek. It's over 50 acres of an amazing property. It used to be additional side streams off of Ash Creek. It was full of wildlife. It's trying to hang on by creating habitat for ducks, which was on his video. There's fish in Ash Creek. There's turtles. There's herons. It's really amazing. And it could be a show place for Tigard because it's so big. And I've worked on many mitigation sites in Oregon. And I highly, highly suggest that the city consider this because citizens would like that. You didn't have a lot of comments on the wetland loss because most people aren't aware of even what a wetland is. So they wouldn't know until you told them, and they'd go, oh yeah, we don't want to lose any more wetlands. I mean, people usually don't, from all my experience. People love wildlife. People want to protect existing wildlife. My other concern is, and I haven't looked at the maps, what's going to happen to where Sano Creek hits the freeway or the auxiliary lane. We've gotten turtles coming up on the highway. We've gotten ducks. Are we going to provide underground passage of some sort, which I know ODOT has done before, for those animals? So that's also another concern. And I'm blind, so I was not able to look at the plans at all. but I do appreciate being able to submit comments tonight. And I would gladly love to give any of my time and advice to anybody that's working on this project, because I've been here 30 years. I know where all the turtles are. I know where a lot of wildlife is. There, we think there's a heron colony on the site that we're discussing. And I hope that you take my comments into consideration. I thank you. And I do ask for continuance so that we can continue talking about in the city mitigation. Thank you.
And before you hang up, I just want to ask and make sure it's particularly helpful for the council if you have any specific criteria, if you can reference the specific approval criteria in the city code that you believe or are concerned about, and the evidence that you may have that the applicant hasn't met that code, please let us know that as well. And that goes for any of the other callers. But before we let the first caller go, did you want to add anything about that?
Are you talking to me?
Yes,
Sorry.
just that's the primary. The reason I'm asking is that's the primary. That's actually what the council is, by Oregon land use law, is sort of required to make its decision on. So I just want to give you an opportunity, and I'll give each caller the opportunity to provide that as well.
Yeah, I understand what's going on. And with the building of the auxiliary lanes, we are going to lose some wetlands. We're going to lose really nice shrub habitat that the birds love, with lots of shrubs along the area near Sano Creek and other places. And it makes me very sad that we're going to lose it. But if we're going to lose it, I highly recommend we mitigate in the city, because that particular property would be ideal because it's right off the freeway.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate your testimony tonight, and we will move on to the next caller. Mr. Nollup. Yes, sorry about that. This is what happens when we get our process out of order here. Caller, did you have any desire to challenge the impartiality of any of the members of the council to make this decision? Okay, thank you.
No, I don't.
All right. It's just an important process step. So thank you very much, and sorry I had so many questions for you at the end. Mr. Nollup, I think we'll move on to the next caller.
Hello.
Good evening. We're ready for your testimony. If you could start by stating your name for the record, and then also indicating whether or not you wish to challenge the impartiality of any of the city council to hear this case, and then you can move on with your testimony.
My name's Jim Long. I reside at 10655 Southwest Hall Boulevard, Tigard 90223. I don't have enough information to challenge any of the councilors' thoughts. I mean, I've done that in the past, as you know, Mr. Mayor, but I don't have that information now. So for my testimony, how many of you remember in the 1970s and 80s and 90s when there was a large 40-plus vibrant wetland east of Highway 217? I wish I could show you the aerial photos. You should see the aerial photos of that wetland. It was owned by Dr. Gene Davis, and he proceeded to dry up the wetland. That land is part of, and this is the most important thing, that land is part of the 100-year floodplain south of Oak Street and Washington Square. It is in the Washington Square Regional Center boundaries. Did you get the short video that I did? Has that been shown yet? There's a short video snapped on April 25th of this year showing wildlife, 3 ducks flying towards us. The last to be swimming with his ducklings or her ducklings, with a heron strutting and reflecting in the pond with the Washington Square Regional Center boundaries. And you can hear a Morning West train in the background near the end of the longer version of the video. In addition, we've seen many other species of wildlife in this area, including beaver, mink, red fox, geese, swans, coyotes, etc. The stars of the video are the wildlife, and the stars of the wetlands are the wildlife. Mitigation should occur in Tigard. This is important so that we in Tigard can enjoy it, so that we can enjoy the wetlands, so that we can enjoy the wildlife. It's good for the ecosystem, and it should be highly considered. ODOT already used 7 acres of wetlands for the West Train as they were redoing that. And is this double dipping? Is that something that's legal? Is reusing the same mitigation site? I really encourage the city and ODOT to get a hold of the current property owners and explain that since the 100-year floodplain is unbuildable, the city or ODOT would like to purchase that property for mitigation and other purposes. This could be a wonderful mitigation bank site for ODOT, for Metro, for the city of Tigard, for clean water services. I think a joint effort would work really well. Not all animals can fly. ODOT should create a tunnel. Create a tunnel as an underground passage like ODOT did in Bend. We probably can find a picture of that if you give us time. When I asked Monica, the planner yesterday, who was the property owner of that big swatch of land east of 217, south of Oak Street, her response, ODOT has contacted the property owners and ODOT has agreements with the property owners. Monica did not tell me who the property owner was. She referred me, and unfortunately, I wasn't, because of timing conflicts, I wasn't able to get the property owner's name, and she said I'd be able to get a large detailed map of the area for us to inspect better. We want to take a look at exactly what was happening. We as citizens cannot go to City Hall and look at maps for more details to ask questions. Now, I understand from talking to Monica that next month, City Hall will be open, and then in September, early September, public hearings can have people in them. So we would be able to go see the maps and get the details we need, and we'd be able to present things in public to you and be able to see your interact, be able to see your response, be able to react in person. We prefer mitigation in city limits. It would just be helpful that way. So there's many questions that could be asked about the auxiliary lanes and ditches. I know you have my testimony. I don't know how much time I have left. In the past, as CPO chair, I've been getting 5 minutes. I don't know how much I get tonight. Does the city of Tigard have a wildlife biology? The affected neighbors on Faffel, excuse me, Southwest 83rd and Southwest 84th, were not notified of the proposed traffic detours. Why not? It's going to have a big effect on them. And if they had been notified of them before this meeting, they might be here testifying before you. Will the off-ramps be affected? How much traffic will there be on Faffel? There's a school there. There's with young drivers who go to school in the morning and later. It's going to be difficult for them. Will the sound barrier stop wildlife from traveling? At the very first open house a couple of years ago, we asked if there could be some vines or other plants to further diminish the noise and add beauty to the sound barrier. I think embellishing like that would be a good sense. So, in conclusion, our CPO members do not oppose the auxiliary lanes for widening 217, but we're very concerned about protecting wildlife habitat, wetlands, protecting the 100-year floodplain, and keeping mitigation on site, as well as traffic congestion during construction. CPO 4M asks for continuance so that 1, the sensitive lands review can continue. 2, we can see the details of the big maps usually available at City Hall, but currently closed. 3, on-site mitigation can be explored better. And 4, the current property owners of the 100-year floodplain can be queried about their vision for the property. What is their vision for the property and possible sale for joint restoration as a vibrant wetland? What is their vision? Are they planning on developing it? If they are, it's a 100-year floodplain, and we will oppose it. It just doesn't make sense to build on it. It's unbuildable land. I also submitted our very positive wetlands restoration proposal. The community participation organization has provided this positive step, and we would hope that the different groups could get together and work on it to return the wetlands to natural functions and restore wetlands at the biggest mitigation area in the entire 217 quarter and Tigard. This includes restoring the original hydrological regime to let time reestablish the native plant and animal community with associated habitat value. The previous owner made many attempts to change the hydrology of the site. This was illegal. He did get in legal trouble for this. This includes removal of vegetation, trapping of beavers, and changes to the flow of Ash Creek. Mitigation should happen locally instead of far away. I encourage ODOT, Clean Water Services, and other partners to use this as a mitigation site. We suggest collaborations with ODOT, Metro, City of Tigard, Clean Water Services, the Wetlands Conservancy to buy the property, get agreements to specify design details, meter the water under Highway 217, fill up the wetlands, get a better flow during all the months. Educational programs, including and involving schools about the Pacific Flyway Zone, would be very beneficial. What wildlife are we talking about? There's many of them. I know there was a site here in Metzger that had 66 different species. The summary that the mayor gave of my testimony did not include all this, so I want all this to go on record. That's why I'm reading it all. So the summary needs to include all of this, including our asking for a variance. So I wondered, was the video shown? Was the video of the?
Well, Mr. Long, you provided written testimony, and the council all received that, and that included the link to the video. We have not shown it during the meeting, and I guess I would ask the city attorney, do we need to show the video, or is it acceptable for the council to receive the testimony and watch the video themselves?
Yes, the video was sent to council earlier this afternoon. It'll be entered into the land use record. It's my understanding technology doesn't allow the video to play during this meeting. So council should watch it on their own if they haven't already, and it will be part of the land use record.
All right, Mr. Long, I will ask you, just as the last person that gave testimony, about whether there are any specific approval criteria in the Tigard Code that we are considering tonight in this land use application that you want to specifically cite that we are, I mean, that's again what we have to primarily make our decision based on. So if there are approval criteria you're wanting to speak to, it would be helpful to know that now. If not, we appreciate your testimony.
Mr. Mayor, if we were able to get a continuance, I'm sure we could come back with the actual specific City of Tigard Community Development Code language that this pertains to. I did not see that. We've been a little hindered by the pandemic and the process we've been going through. I did have comments from a few people who had a difficult time getting online. It's confusing because the cell phone says it's from Clatskanie, Oregon. At 7:40 p.m., I did have a note from Ellen Partel saying that she tried to get online 4 times but could not get on. So we're having difficulty, and if you're able to continue it into when we have in-person public hearings, and I'm able to check on the CDC code more specifically, I could answer your question more fully.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate your testimony tonight, and we'll move on to the next caller. Good evening. Do we have our next caller on the line?
Yes, this is Elise Shearer, Mr. Mayor. I am calling from 9980 Southwest Johnson Street in Tigard. And I wanted to say thank you, Mayor and City Council, for all the continued hard work this last year and a half. I have no challenges to any members of the council and their testimony tonight. And I will just go ahead and read what I sent in as an email, so it's on record. Also, we have all driven past on Highway 217, and I personally avoid it during rush hour, just like you, Councilor Goodhouse. Okay, dear City Council members, as a former PTAC member, I follow transportation planning in the city area with keen interest. This planning is always very involved, and of course, once we get the city involved with the state, it gets more involved. As a citizen, I'm very concerned about the major wetland impacts to the Ash Creek area on both sides of Highway 217 with the planned lane expansions. We are very proud of our wildlife that we have roaming through the city, and this will definitely affect them, as well as the 100-year floodplain, the Tigard Wetland Inventory, the Goal 5 Safe Harbor Zone. It will be of significant impact to the Clean Water Services vegetated corridor and to Goal 5 significant habitat areas, including some very significant tree groves on both sides of the highway. I would like to advocate for all the mitigation dollars to be kept in our Tigard community to rebuild the Ash Creek area and minimize impacts of construction. We have many areas of new development where we could put those mitigation dollars in order to build up wetlands and wildlife corridors. The traffic impacts are something I'm very concerned about in the city of Tigard. It will be difficult to endure for this entire period of construction. When the lanes on Highway 217 are closed during construction, the ramps, etc., we will need to have official detour routes that avoid the residential areas on both north and south of Highway 217 and the schools, and have them enforced. We already have major traffic impacts from all other surrounding communities using Highway 99 and 217 in driving through our city. There are a lot of safety concerns about the Metzger neighborhood that will experience cut-through traffic as people attempt to get into Hall Boulevard heading north. Greenberg Road and Cascade Boulevard will bear the brunt south of Highway 217 and Hall Boulevard rerouting. And these are both very residential neighborhoods on each side of the highway. Having Hall Boulevard closed with a bridge replacement for 6 months over Highway 217 will significantly impact businesses in Tigard and Washington Square. I ask for our city staff to work very closely with all of them for preparation purposes. We need more feedback as to how this will affect them. I ask for continuance so we can continue to have more public meetings. Having a meeting in 2019 isn't enough with the states. And we need, I know they've had online open houses, but if the information, if people aren't directly following it and information isn't getting directly to the citizens of Tigard and getting directly to businesses affected, I believe we need to work harder on communication issues that way. I know as a former member of the TTAC that transportation is difficult for all citizens to endure, and it's difficult for our engineers to pursue. It's difficult for our city staff to endure complaints. And I just really want to see everybody working together to make sure that we're all on the same page. And I thank you for your time. So I guess that's the end of my testimony.
So thank you. Thank you, Elise. And if you have any specific Tigard Development Code criteria that we're using for our consideration tonight that you want to cite, please let us know. I don't think I specifically heard any reference tonight, but if there is any, please share your specific concerns with us now, if possible.
I don't have any codes to quote. No, thank you. I don't. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Okay, we have a good evening and thanks for calling in. And Mr. Nullup, we'll move on to the, is this still the last caller? Okay.
Hello, this is Ellen Partel. Hi.
Hi, Ellen.
Hi, my name is Ellen Partel, and I live at 8225 Southwest Pathel Street in Tigard 97223. And in case we forget, I don't have any problems with anybody on the council or any conflicts. Okay.
Thank you.
So I'm calling with a couple of questions than I am with testimony about continuances, but they may result in continuances. And so I do remember getting a brochure, but it was pre-COVID, about the 217 expansion and that the Hall Boulevard would be closed. And at that time, I was questioning whether the hall would be closed on which side of Paffel, so that you would still be able to go onto Hall from Paffel, or if it would be blocked at that point. I did speak with Lily Boycourt a couple months ago, and she told me, she said she believed it would be completely closed. And at that point, I had spoken to some of my neighbors and on next door, and no one was aware of the fact that Hall was going to be closed and potentially Hall with Paffel for 6 to 9 months. So I am wondering if it's true that Paffel's going to be shut off there, so the only entrance then will be through Dartmouth, or what was the thought process there? And then my second question was, the sound walls that are running from City Hall, Bible Church, High School, along all the way to Paffel, I was wondering how tall they were going to be, and where their positioning on the top of the hill would be, if it would be at the top of immediately closest to where it would fall down into the road. I know it wouldn't, but you know what I'm saying. Or would it be close to the fences? And my concern is that there's a pathway along there that you could drive a truck through, because I know somebody mows it, and there's a lot of transients there. Well, a year ago when I got the first brochure about this, there was not any transients there. Now there is continually ongoing living happening along there, and if we put a sound wall up to give them a private pathway, they could probably start renting rooms. So I'm wondering if any consideration has been given to what's going to happen to those people and how we're going to keep that from becoming. I can't walk on that pathway anymore. I used to walk with my dog, who's a 185-pound Mastiff, and the last time I walked over there about a week ago, there was a guy started following us, yelling obscenities at us. So I won't walk there anymore by myself. Well, anymore at all. So that's my questions. I don't know if you can answer them tonight or email me or what, but I would like you to think about those things.
So thank you for that testimony. What I'm going to say about that is that I think those questions are great questions. They're probably not specifically related to the significant wetlands topic this evening that is being considered before the council, but that does not mean they're not important questions, nor questions that can't be answered. I will ask the ODOT staff and our city staff in their response to testimony to start with answering any of those questions that they can, and then also ask that staff, for anything that they can't answer tonight, that they follow up with you directly. So make sure that our planning staff has your contact information so that can be provided to and followed up on by the ODOT team. But why don't we start with response to testimony from staff, and if you could start with responding to her questions as much as you can. I know it's not necessarily on point for the topic at hand tonight, but please do what you can and then follow up with her later if appropriate.
Good evening, Mayor Snyder. Did I need to put my hand up, or do you see me?
No, you're on, Mr. McGuire. Okay. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Councilors. I'm Tom McGuire, Assistant Community Development Director. I thought I would step in and take kind of the first shot at responding to some of the testimony. You threw me a little curveball when you asked me for the first person to respond to the last testifier's comments. I think most of those I'm going to leave to ODOT, the applicant, to address her questions, because I think pretty much all of her concerns, which I agree are good concerns, and well stated, that ODOT and the project team moving forward will be able to answer that. As I think the ODOT staff mentioned, they've got I think $1 million budget moving forward to talk about construction and traffic issues around construction. So I will let ODOT address that. I think there was a lot of good testimony tonight. It was a very wide range of topics. And so, first of all, I just wanted to remind the council that the focus tonight is on the comprehensive plan amendment and the wetland impacts. That is all the aspect of the ODOT 217 widening project that we have influence over at this point through this hearing. And regarding that, I think the biggest question that came out of testimony tonight that you're probably wondering about is the issue of on-site versus off-site mitigation. And so that's the part I wanted to address specifically. The approval criteria doesn't specifically go into that. It's pretty silent about that. Essentially, that's covered in the ESEE analysis when they evaluate the environmental impacts and mitigation. But generally, anytime we review significant lands or any of these comp plan amendments, we always prefer on-site mitigation. I think all resource agencies, we always prefer on-site mitigation, but it's a hierarchy. And in this particular instance, I'm sure ODOT will address it, but my my recollection is that they talked to the property owners adjacent to 217 looking for on-site mitigation options. I believe the property that Mr. Long has been referring to and some of the other callers is the Dr. Davis property. And I know ODOT approached him and he was not interested in, it's private property, so he was not interested in selling property or any kind of easements or allowing them to do mitigation on their property. And I would just say we run into that, City of Tigard, we run into that all the time. For our own projects, there's a dearth of mitigation opportunities in the City of Portland, I'm sorry, in the City of Tigard that that has been an issue for us. And if you recall the recent similar case, the comp plan amendment for the Fano Creek Trail connections, they also had to mitigate at the mitigation bank for much of those wetland impacts. So we're always looking for opportunities for on-site mitigation. I completely agree with everything the first two testifiers said about that property. It would be a fantastic place for mitigation. I believe we've even approached that owner, Dr. Davis, at one point about purchasing that property as well, or working with him to develop a mitigation bank. That's a, that's a another option that we've talked to them about, but so far that has not been the direction that property owner has wanted to go.
So, Mr. McGuire, while you're on that topic, can you also address the within the City of Tigard versus on-site? Because I've heard, some of it was on-site, or you're using that terminology. We also heard multiple people testify about just mitigation within the City of Tigard. Is there a benefit to that? Is there a way to, if the code is sort of doesn't speak to it, does that mean the council can interpret the code tonight if it's not really mentioned one way or another?
Well, first of all, you could interpret that, yes, since it's not specifically mentioned one way or another. Generally, as staff, what we try to do, referred to the hierarchy as, first of all, on-site, second, off-site within the city and within the same stream corridor or wetland stream corridor complex. And if mitigation sites aren't available there, then we want as close to the city or as close to the resource site as possible. And so that we basically, ODOT got down to that last one with the mitigation bank, which is into Tualatin and just downstream from Fano Creek.
Okay, so I'm assuming perhaps other staff or the ODOT staff will respond to that maybe more specifically, because I think there's going to be a number of council questions about that coming up soon.
I imagine they will, and again, it always comes down to availability of property, and there's just not a lot left in Tigard right now. So,
thank you. Is there other staff response to testimony? And City Attorney Rahala, can I allow the applicant to respond to the testimony or not?
Yes, the applicant can have the last word.
Okay. So ODOT team broadly, do you want to respond to any of the testimony and perhaps at least answer the questions we were asking, and to the extent that you can answer the questions from the caller as well, though those are not necessarily on point for this evening?
I would like to, I have no problem responding to the questions that were asked. The last caller had several off-topic questions. However, I was not able to write them down fast enough and track exactly what the questions were. If we can get them in writing, we will respond. And probably tomorrow or by the end of the week, I can respond to those if I have those questions in writing. Are you guys doing a transcript of this that I can get that?
I'm confident our staff, particularly the city recorder, can get those to you. And then also city recorder, I'm hoping you can connect, or somebody on staff can connect the person that gave that testimony with Kelly, please.
Yes, we will.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
So ODOT team, do you want to respond to any of the rest of the testimony? Or not?
This is James. I think one of maybe the overarching theme is the questions surrounding on-site versus banked credits on-site and within the city of Tigard, and how we came to those determinations. I think Tom hit the nail on the head. His description is very accurate. As a team, especially when we look at a project of this size, we would love to find on-site wetland mitigation opportunities. It's of a scale that we could construct a project that has a good potential for success. However, there's just very little available. ODOT has nothing within right-of-way. The site is extraordinarily constrained. In fact, most of the time when we're hitting wetlands, the wetland boundary is right up against the toe of the existing slope within ODOT's right-of-way, and there's nothing left within right-of-way that we could use. As Tom mentioned, we did actually reach out to Dr. Davis. He's the owner of the parcel, and we did that for a couple of reasons. A, we saw the parcel. It looked like a good opportunity. But B, we were also told about the parcel and the potential by Jim Long following or at the original neighborhood meeting. He mentioned it as a really good mitigation opportunity. So that got us thinking, and we approached Dr. Davis. ODOT funded an effort to study the entire parcel. We got through the field work to delineate all of the existing wetlands and vegetated corridors on the parcel and several parcels that Dr. Davis owns. We started doing preliminary studies for cultural and started to get that ball rolling. But as we got into it, there were a number of things that prevented us from continuing with that effort. And one of them is Dr. Davis has other plans for that property, and it wasn't immediately available for the mitigation use. So really, it's just a lack of availability of property on site. That's what drives us. And the other thing to keep in mind is when we use mitigation banks, we achieve an offset, a replacement of the lost functions, in particular in the values that we're looking at, really well. These are sites that have previously been constructed, so they're already out there. They're functioning very well. They've been accepted by the regulatory agencies. So really, we have no what we call temporal loss in function and value of these wetlands. We take it offline with the construction of our project. It's already out there and functioning. So that's a really positive aspect of using a wetland mitigation bank, and something to keep in mind is we don't have that temporal loss. So banks are a really good option. As far as the the on-site, we do have vegetated corridor mitigation that we constructed within the corridor. That is in the city of Beaverton primarily. There's 3 different sites. One is in Tigard. 2 of them are located in the city of Beaverton. And those are in ODOT right-of-way where we did have available space. So we looked at every little piece of ground that ODOT had remaining in the right-of-way, and we used it as best we could. So I think that was the overarching comment. If there were other questions, they're not immediately coming to mind. If anybody wants to remind me of them, I'm happy to address them.
Can you comment on whether the proposed mitigation bank is, I think as I understand what you've presented tonight, it is not in the same stream corridor. It's in an adjacent or close to. But can you speak to whether there's any other options that are with, I mean, I assume no, but I don't want to make assumptions. So is there not a mitigation that's available within the same corridor?
There is not. There is no mitigation banking credit or mitigation site that we could have partnered with within specifically the Ash Creek or localized Fano Creek corridors. It is within the Tualatin River watershed. It's out near Hillsborough, and it is one of the closest available options that we have. And unfortunately, the mitigation bank options are just limited. And I guess another thing to keep in mind is we didn't just limit our search to the banks or to Dr. Davis's property. We did look at other options for wetland and VC mitigation along the corridor, a little bit out into the Bethany area. We started close and we worked our way out, and this is where we landed as what was possible.
All right. Are there other ODOT staff responses or topics that anybody wants to cover? I don't know if anyone wants to speak to the wildlife tunnel. I don't know that that's directly on point. It's at least maybe slightly closer to topic than some of the traffic comments, but is there any either plans for that? Is it appropriate? Is it possible?
Thank you for reminding me of that. I can address that to some degree. There are no plans to increase the number of crossings, whether for wildlife passage or otherwise, along the corridor at grade. The existing barrier that is the freeway, it's out there. It's 4+ lanes wide, and we didn't have it within the scope or the budget of this project to create those new crossings that would have allowed for a new wildlife or improved wildlife passage between those wetland complexes. The main existing crossing is at Ash Creek. There's a double box culvert out there that provides some passage, though it's obviously lacking for what we would want to see in a perfect world, but that is what's out there, and we're not proposing to increase it.
And then any comments on the continuance to a date certain in that request? Is that something ODOT is potentially willing to entertain, or is ODOT staff opposed to that tonight?
I'm sorry, to a continuance of the date? Is that what you asked?
Yeah, I mean, that's another area of testimony that I don't think's been responded to. I think almost every person that testified asked for a continuance until this could be heard in public. They could look at maps and have more information in person and access to City Hall in a way that they don't feel like they do now. And I just don't, generally applicants say they're opposed to those kinds of things, but I'm going to ask because people testified about it. In fact, every single person testified about it tonight.
And I am going to say that we are opposed to it. We are the project is out being bid right now, so we would have to stop our contractor for a very large project in this area. Yeah. So yes, we are opposed to a continuation.
All right, I'll give ODOT staff one last opportunity to respond to any other of the testimony. Otherwise, I'm going to close the public hearing. All right, I'm going to close the public hearing. Council consideration of ordinance number 21-14. Any council members want to speak first? Councilor Newton?
I'll go. I just have two questions for, is it Mr. Stupful? Is that how you say your name? We talked about the Ash Creek, the Mr. Davis's property, and I was here when the road was built in 1974, and there was nothing out here, and everybody thought it was crazy to have a freeway out here. But anyway, my two questions are: we talked about why Mr. Davis's property wasn't available, and you went to then the land bank that you did. But I didn't hear either Mr. McGuire or you talk about what you did in terms of looking at all other possible sites in Tigard. I felt like there was a little gap there. And then my second question is, you talked about the wildlife crossing and how that wasn't included. Are there benefits? Would there be benefits to including that? Or in your opinion, is there not, because we're not developing the wetlands on the, I'll call it the northeast side? So if you could answer those two questions, thank you.
Yeah. So I guess we covered the main mitigation alternatives that we evaluated. We have
Mr. Mayor, sorry, can I just interrupt? In order to answer this question, you'll have to reopen the public hearing.
Yeah, I was actually gonna, thank you, City Attorney Rala. Council, I guess we had moved to the time of basically deliberation, so we can move back to questions and I can reopen the public hearing. Councilor Newton, is that what you would like to do?
No, that's fine. I just felt like there were some other issues that were raised in the responses, but that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, I don't mind at all reopening it. I just want to make sure we follow the right process. So if you'd like to get more answers, and are there other members of council that want to ask questions and not deliberate? Councilor Newton, we can reopen it for your questions if you want. You don't want that?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So who would like to speak on deliberation of this ordinance? You gonna let me go first, I guess? Oh, Councilor Goodhouse.
I was just going to say, if no one's going to speak, I was going to make a motion, but I'll let you go ahead and if you're going to deliberate.
One of the things that I'm challenged by, and I think troubled by to some extent, is that, Oregon land use law is really specific, and we talk to our community members, even tonight, every single one of them. I separately prompted them to speak to the approval criteria, and we didn't get a single piece of testimony that's specific to the approval criteria, not one reference, not one example. I think it's very challenging when, our job in this environment is to make a decision in more of a quasi-judicial format, which lays out what the criteria are, and our job is to judge whether or not the question before us is, does the application and the applicant meet the criteria? So in an environment where we have a bunch of public testimony and not a single person raises a single point that's on point, it's very challenging. And some of the people, I know Oregon land use law can be challenging for folks, but some of the people testifying tonight have been testifying on land use things before us and heard me, other elected officials, say the same thing for the better part of a decade. So I guess I'll just add that as context, and I don't know if others have different thoughts about that, but that's just challenging from my perspective.
Mr. Mayor, I agree with you. Oh, sorry. And I think the reason I asked that question was, you know, the code being silent on where the mitigation occurs. And I agree that, you know, we're limited in terms of what the criteria is. And I feel like if every rock was looked under and we just don't really have any closer mitigation, I don't know that, you know, then the criteria is met. So that's why I raised that. I just wanted to make sure that sort of every rock was looked under, because the preference would be to have mitigation occur here. But short of that, you know, the criteria is met for mitigating. So.
And what would be I guess I wonder what the impact would be if we said that the mitigation had to be done within the city of Tigard, which it sounds like we could do tonight. It sounds like ODOT would not have a way of complying with that.
Well, yeah. And that's why I ask about every rock being turned over, partly for my own information and also so the community members could be clear that you know, that's the preference. But if that can't be, you know, if that isn't possible and they can meet the criteria another way, I don't think we have a strong case to require it to be for the impacts to be mitigated in Tigard. So.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just thinking through the impacts of all of that, and what, you know, if we were to require that and ODOT needed to do this project, could they or would they then be forced to use, you know, some sort of eminent domain process to obtain I mean, it brings things into a whole new level of complexity. Councillor Goodhouse, did you have?
Sorry, I was just wondering. I don't want to. I want deliberations to go, and then if
okay,
if there's any other comments, I won't interrupt. But I was just going to agree with what you were saying, that we're in a situation where, as it said before, you know, we have a judge's hat on, and we have to look at whether or not it fits the criteria or not, and that's all we have to take into account on this. So I'll throw that in, and after everyone's done deliberating, then I'll make a motion.
Yeah, I mean, to clarify, it's not just it's the only things that we can take into consideration. I mean, it's okay. Councillor Shaw, I just want to make sure, since that I've still got you on audio, and do you have any questions or comments? I shouldn't say
No,
questions. Do you have any deliberation points?
Correct. Thank you. I was going to mention the deliberation points. I do not, and I would agree that if we're looking at strictly the criteria, it does meet the criteria, and I believe the Planning Commission voted unanimously to that as well. But thank you for recognizing me, even though I'm not in person visually.
Council President Lube.
Yeah, I want to thank everyone for, you know, their public testimony and caring so much about, you know, the wetlands and the wildlife and all of that. And it does sort of feel like our hands are tied to a certain extent because it does meet the criteria. And I appreciated with every call you were asking them about the criteria so we could, you know, begin to pull it out. And so, yeah, it feels like a rock in a hard place. And, you know, as counselors, we are charged with judging it based on the criteria and not how we feel about what's happening to the land.
Youth Councillor Nog, did you want to add anything before we potentially move forward here?
I guess my one thing is that I feel like we have a responsibility to also look at the wetlands and the animals that might be harmed in the process. And maybe we're setting a dangerous precedent if we continue letting people like use land in the future as well. But if there's a way we could compromise and like set up tunnels and other temporary wetlands for the animals, that would also be good.
So on that point, City Attorney Rahala, can we ask a question about that comment, or can we not do that either? I guess I'm just wondering whether there's any approval this is more of a factual question. So are there any approval criteria that we could use to require any of what Youth Councilor Nog just suggested?
So the approval criteria are pretty broad. I will actually defer to Mr. McGuire for that answer.
ODOT didn't specifically respond to that, but my knowledge of the project is there's at each of these locations where the wetland impacts are, they're crossings of Ash Creek and Red Rock Creek. So, and I believe one of them's a bridge. I've walked through it. So at least on the Ash Creek one, there is already, it already functions as a wildlife underpass. I think the Red Rock Creek is a culvert and there's probably room there, but that I do not know for sure. So, although the criteria is pretty open, if you are going to specifically require something like that, you would need to be pretty specific in kind of what it is, what effect you're mitigating, or tying your proposed mitigation or change that you're requiring of ODOT back to a specific concern or impact. Generally, we do that in the ESEE analysis.
And are you saying that would be hard to do given that there's already ways for wildlife to pass in both corridors? Is that what you're saying?
I would say on behalf of staff review and what we proposed to the Planning Commission that we are satisfied that that aspect of the resource is mitigated. That yes, there is ample other opportunities for wildlife.
Youth Councilor Nog, do you want to add anything further?
No, thank you.
Okay. Council, is there a motion or any further discussion?
Councilor Goodhouse, I move to approve ordinance number 21-14.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Further discussion? City Recorder, please read the number and title of the ordinance.
Ordinance number 21-14, an ordinance approving comprehensive plan amendment CPA 20-00603 to remove 5.45 acres of locally significant wetlands from the Tigard Wetland and Stream Corridor map inventory.
And a roll call vote, and Councilor Newton, I did remute you while she was reading, sorry.
Councilor Goodhouse.
Yes.
Councilor Newton.
Yes.
Council President Lube.
Yes.
Councilor Shaw.
Yes.
Mayor Snyder.
Yes. Okay, ordinance number 21-14 is adopted unanimously. We have no non-agenda items. City Manager Reimer, administrative report.
Absolutely. Good evening again, Mayor and councilors. Thanks for a great discussion in all these items. I just wanted to start by reiterating some of the thanks that all of you said about the events that took place and the planning that took place with the fireworks on the 4th of July. Thanks to PD, thanks to our communications team. They really did jump into action following your special meeting on that Thursday evening, and I think the results spoke for themselves. So thanks to them as well as our communications team. Just a few quick updates. I'm also having technology issues, so if I get cut off, I know Assistant City Manager Nyland's ready to jump right in. As you know, we are planning to return to in-person services on August 9th. We do have several in-person services now, but August 9th, as one of the individuals commented this evening, we will be returning. We've learned a great deal this year and a half, and so the expectation is that we will not be returning to the way things used to be, but trying to continue to innovate and find ways of serving each other, serving the community, making sure the council has what you need. We will then be returning to the in-person meetings with the city council that first Tuesday in September. And so we're targeting that date, as well as starting to work with our commissions, as we've talked about. A few other things, just some updates from our library. Once again, a sign of our community and our region reopening. The library saw just under 5,600 visitors in June compared to 3,000 last year, and circulated over 51,000 items this year. And June last year was just over 44,600. So you can see the increasing demand as people are returning to the site. We did receive 10 new 5-star reviews on Google, which is great, as we're trying to have that excellence in service. And so some of the comments we heard, everyone working here is so wonderful and helpful. It's always a joy to interact with them. So as you've heard in the past, many positive comments about our library and other services that we have. Excuse me. We've been talking about the summer reading program at our library as well, and we've had over 1,000 kids, teens, and adults sign up for it. So just a great number of people participating in that event. Another sign that our community is reopening is we have the return of the Tigard-Tualatin Bike Rodeo this weekend coming up. And so over 60 kids at this point are registered for the 2 events, one on Saturday, which will be at Tigard Elementary, and the one on Sunday will be at Tualatin Elementary. One is from 9 to noon, or 9 to 11, and the second session is noon to 2 on each day. Our Metzger Elementary school students are participating in the downtown art walk that you heard about earlier during the chamber update. The artist event this Friday from 3 to 7. Their work entitled Our Art Matters is currently on display at Universal Plaza. So another great way of integrating our youth into our community and demonstrating all their skills. A few other quick updates. We have our Tigard active permits now live. This provides on-site access to our data, to the community, to our development community, of both pending and current permits through our building, planning, and engineering process. So as we continue to try to improve our open communication, transparency, and ease of access to information, this will be another great tool for the community. And we also have our free small business workshop. This is happening July 18th and 19th, and this is the 5th installment in a monthly series, and we're partnering with Forest Grove, Sherwood, and Wilsonville to help small businesses in developing what they need to be successful and vibrant and to serve our communities. And that concludes my report for this evening. Thanks again, and have a great night.
Thank you, City Manager Reimer. We have no executive sessions scheduled. Is there a motion for adjournment?
I move for adjournment.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. City Recorder, roll call vote, please.
Councillor Goodhouse,
Yes.
Councillor Newton,
Yes.
Council President Lube,
Yes.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
Mayor Snyder.
Yes. We are adjourned. Good night, Tiger.
Night.
Good night, Tiger.
Good night, everybody.
So Mike, are you still there?